Every time I take off on one of my many road trips that I take as a crane operator, I always make it a point to have a specific subject matter that I want to touch on during my limited spare time while I'm out on that gig, whether it's alone in the crane cab, whether it's in my limited spare time back at the motel room, whether it's books, whether it's podcasts, whether it's pamphlets, whether it's articles, whether it's any combination of the above. For this trip, my brother in Christ, Bill Wade, gifted me a book by Rod Dreher, Live Not by Lies, a manual for Christian dissidents. It was based on the Alexander Solzhenitsyn essay of the same name, and it was reflective of how Christians survived and resisted under totalitarian governments in the past, and how the shadows of that resistance to totalitarian governments in the past dovetails and parallels the direction where society is headed now. This was my anchor, and it was a phenomenal book. I recommend it to any of you, and if you are too occupied to actually do the reading, the audiobook is also available. It's definitely worth the read, whether you are Christian, secular, or otherwise. The power of the historical accounts of ideological defiance in the face of tyranny cannot be overstated. While I was out on the road, I was exploring Live Not by Lies and resistance to tyranny, and also having to acknowledge that sometimes that tyranny comes in the guise of the Christian or the spiritual. I tapped into two particular small books and a number of podcasts, starting with the Salem witch trials. Now, we all have at least a tangential familiarity with the Salem witch trials, the false accusations, the power plays, the way that it developed into a Kafka-esque escapade of religious power run amok, becoming the very tyranny that later on, under the totalitarian governments, those Christians would attempt to resist. The overarching point is that none are without sin, none are without guilt, and even the most allegedly virtuous can be turned to the dark side. And in the name of powers that are supposed to liberate and free the spirit, tyranny can be imposed. Many people died, all of which were based on lies and fear. One of the other ones that I tapped into, pamphlets, books, and a number of podcasts, was Jonestown. Jonestown was ostensibly a religious organization, and through those religious trappings, they were able to impose a specific kind of political tyranny. We'll tap on all of these more as we go on, but let's not forget it was the left that gave us Jonestown. What you see here is George Moscone and Harvey Milk. Harvey Milk, a degenerate and a pedophile who's now being deified because that's the nature of things. This was the San Francisco political machine that was fueled by Jones's money and his political influence. It also gave us Dianne Feinstein, who thankfully was pulled from this world earlier this year. And it also gave us this gentleman in the middle, Willie Brown. Willie Brown went on to give us this certain person. So all of these things continue to resonate when religious trappings are twisted by the left or the right to impose the tyranny that they claim to oppose. Imposition versus opposition, the line can sometimes be very thin. Now, we all know that people are very pliable. The human mind is a very pliable thing. Need look no further than the experiments of Solomon Asch that we'll be getting more into later in the program, or And this is the more terrifying of the two. The experiments headed up by Stanley Milgram, where people were willing to cause the death of a complete stranger based on no more quote unquote authority than a lab coat and a clipboard. Boy, that one would come back to haunt us in the last 3 years, would it not? People are certainly pliable and want to be tyrants, certainly take advantage of that. And we are all familiar with the Third Reich and Joseph Goebbels and that propaganda. Some of us are slightly more than tangentially familiar with the Soviet and communist propaganda, although you can't walk with a swastika in the street in a public demonstration anymore. Walking with a hammer and sickle is virtually encouraged by the same people that brought you this. I digress. The human mind is pliable. Propaganda will take advantage of that pliable mind's vulnerabilities and pliabilities. But how is this or this any different in any real, tangible aspect than this? This was a video that I'm sure you've seen. It's gone viral from Sinclair Media, where all of these media talking heads are repeating exactly the same talking point. The irony of this that I borrowed the still shot from was that it was put out by NPR, a state-sponsored media organization if ever there was one, and these news whores, allegedly objective, who carry the regime's propaganda just as efficiently on a level that would make Goebbels or the Soviet propaganda machine blush in jealousy and envy with just how efficiently they are able to pull it off. Now, the one thing we have to keep in mind is that each and every one of us have that pliability and that vulnerability. We all have our biases. We all have our weaknesses that can be spoken to and exploited. We'd all like to think that in the wake of a modern day Salem witch trial that we would be Giles Corey, laying there in utter defiance, saying over and over again, more weight, more weight, more weight, as we were pressed to death. We'd like to think that we were St. Gabriel Ergebadza, who set fire to a poster of Lenin and Stalin in a public square. In the name of the Orthodox Church, he was sainted. We'd like to think that we would be St. Gabriel setting fire to those posters and challenging them for the graven images and idols that they are. But the likelihood is, for most of us, even those of you who are gathered here, that we all have weaknesses that could be exploited and lead us to the polar opposite of what we claim to stand for. The only way around that is eternal vigilance. And for those of you who do walk in the light, the only way around that is through the boss man and the carpenter kid. We have to remain vigilant, we have to remain tenacious, and we have to pray for clarity and discernment. As the author of Live Not by Lies said, Rod Dreher, American Christians are going to have to come to terms with the brute fact that we live in a culture, one in which our beliefs make increasingly little sense. We speak a language that the world more and more either cannot hear or finds offensive to its ears. And he goes further. It is better to choose to know the painful truth rather than settle on a comforting lie. Resolve to look for and to accept the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Nothing built on lies lasts. And if your belief system, or in fact, if your adherence to it is built on lies, guess what, Sparky? That's not going to last either. You better be finding your strength in a much deeper place. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and, even though I'm in between, certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to stretch that maw open and choke you with a big, fat, turgid, swollen, oozing dose of non-consensual, if necessary, truth cock. Welcome back once again, boys and girls. It is time for the Sunday sermon. We'll see where it goes from there, boys and girls. We're going to be doing a roll call, see how many of the usual suspects are on board right now. Everybody in for the drum roll. Where's my fire, people? Coming hard, charging out of the starting gate as we always do, with the bumper music as it always is. The gut-stomping rock and roll band Red Desert, from the now smoldering embers of ruins of the once great American city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older, and every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. We'll see how it rolls. Going to go ahead and jump on in here, do a quick roll call, see if one of the usual suspects have already shown up. I know Brother Ryan is here. We've got Roman and, of course, no doubt, his lovely wife, Carrie, from opiumtales.com. Joey, the Sultan of Sarcasm. I thought I saw Joel Allen Jackson in here somewhere. It's almost a guarantee that he is on board. Going to go scrolling down through. There's Miss Carrie right there. We had a couple of people that begged off for this week, and I totally get it. It's cool, man. I'm running a little bit later than usual. Brother Clem, breathe, Bart, breathe. I'm trying. I'm maintaining. You notice how relaxed my shoulders are right now. You see that? Just kind of loose. And I actually did shoulders and traps today, so I should be up here. But I'm taking your advice, Clem. Trying to stay on top of it, man. Oh, my goodness. The Mighty Mighty Stone. Just a bit late, Mike. Just a bit late. I'm just kind of dovetailing in, sliding in. I hope Bill makes it because, again, we're going to be discussing that book that he recommended for me. And, again, Live Not by Lies. If you do not have a copy of that or aren't at least tangentially familiar with it, get familiar with that book. It is a phenomenal little text. Brother Tom Hollyby, who is going to be coming along, no doubt, with pithy comments and Musashi quotes before it's over with. And I'm happy for both. Good to see you, Tom. I need to get over the past, man. I'm not going to be doing anything until the new year, so hopefully we'll see you on that end. Brother James Pearson. Yes, sir, my LEO brethren. Oh, my brother in Christ. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. I'm glad you made it out. Let me see. Question. How many of you, here we go. Right out there. How many of you find outstanding Christians are upset God's chosen are bombing the hospitals, or does your collective silence say enough? You know, man, in the defense of a lot of these folks, silence isn't necessarily the thing. There are a lot of people who are being silent, and it is out of cowardice, and I will not abide that. And I think everybody here knows that. Pithy, all right, maybe not so pithy, but we're definitely getting a Musashi quote, aren't we? As I stated earlier on the thread between Ryan and I, we were having that discussion. The Talmud denies Christ, so I'm not going to say that it's his chosen that are doing this thing. But I will say that there is a certain amount of cowardice. And again, you have to be rooted in truth. And sometimes that truth is unpleasant. There are a lot of evangelical Christians and other, again, Soren Kierkegaard's distinction between followers and admirers. There are a number of admirers out there that are being quiet, and there are even a number of followers or people who profess to be followers out there that, whether it is out of ignorance or out of cowardice, are remaining silent on this issue. There are a number of reasons for that, some of which are none of which are excusable, but some of which are more understandable than others. We'll get off into that before it's over with. And, of course, Joey was going to have something to say about that. All right. Little sip of liquid enthusiasm. I didn't bring a battle bottle today. We just got a little bit of liquid enthusiasm in that little Takea container. Waiting for the kratom to kick in. Kind of hurting a little bit right now, to tell you the truth. I went on a blowout mass cycle build this week, hit everything way harder than I've been hitting it in a long time, and I'll be the first to tell you, man, I am super sore. Anyway, kids, we're going to jump on back into this thing real quick. I'm going to go ahead and fade the bumper music out, and we'll go ahead and jump on into the program. Older No Wiser, Red Desert, that is the bumper music. Man, if you haven't already, check those guys out on like Bandcamp or Spotify or anything like that. They're definitely worth checking out, man. Gut stomping little rock and roll band. And they've been very cool in the sense of letting me use that for bumper music. They are aware that I'm using it for bumper music every Sunday, and it's copyrighted stuff. Nobody's pulled it yet. They have, for all intents and purposes, give me their blessing for that. And of course, if that changes, we'll switch it out. But I kind of like it. It provides a measure of stability and regularity to the whole thing. Red Desert, Older No Wiser, the band and the track. That is the bumper music that we open with every single week. Want to get a couple of sponsor shout outs out of the way real quick. First of all, of course, Roman and his lovely wife, Carrie, and Roxy and Allie, and a bevy of beautiful women over at opiumtales.com. We're talking beautiful watercolors of beautiful naked women coupled with testosterone-driven commentary. That is a Planet Bart trifecta. Also, you want to look up Roman's new book on Amazon. He has just released that, From Nebbish to Pimp Daddy, about his journey of just basically going from a guy who's just dabbling in watercolors to a guy who is in demand for beautiful women who want them to paint pictures of them naked. It's a pretty cool little journey. And for those of you who are looking to expound on your creative side a little bit, definitely worth checking out. Also, Casey and Dusty Tellison, Nordic Smoke Barbecue. You can find them on all the social media platforms. They are going to be smoking my holiday turkey. I've been in contact with Dusty again this year. They are going to be smoking my holiday turkey again this year. We are keeping the tradition alive. It's going to be fantastic. Guys, I think if you're in the Spokane area, you might still have time to get that turkey in and get it smoked for the holidays. If not for Thanksgiving, they will be doing it again around Christmas time as well. So over the holidays, if you were looking for just like the best smoked turkey you're ever going to have in your life, Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest, period, end of statement, freaking done. That's it. And I'm looking forward to picking that up this week, and also a couple of racks of ribs on the way out. And it's looking like I may find myself almost alone for Thanksgiving. So anybody who wants to pop through and share in some of this delicious dead animal flesh, the only thing that I'm going to mandate is that, as is Thanksgiving tradition, you have to earn that gluttony. So I'm going to demand that if you do want to participate in the dead animal flesh part of the festivities, that you get here early, and we are going to go out in the garage and we are going to hit some iron, and we're going to throw some chalk around and scream and crank up some doom metal, and it's going to be epic. So hopefully you guys will get out here for that. Let me take a look. What do we got? Okay, part so Leviticus 5. Dude, one thing at a time. Damn it, Ryan. One thing at a time. Dork to Pimp Daddy by Roman Reba. That is the name of the book, by the way. And it is $10 on Kindle. At worst, you learn how to draw nudes. At best, you meet your future wife. There could be a first-person testimony involved in that. So definitely go check it out. Dork to Pimp Daddy by Roman Reba. It is available for $10 on Kindle. And again, Roman is one of my oldest and dearest friends. We go all the way back to 1988. And he has been a strong supporter of the program as well. So we certainly appreciate it. All right. So before I let Ryan take me any further off the beaten path, we are going to jump into the first segment, and we already know where we're headed with that. It is going to be Mr. Ryan's Rabbit Hole. That's right, boys and girls. Let me see if I can pull up the sound effect, and for whatever reason, that's not wanting to cooperate. Here we go. Yes. Yes. Ryan's Rabbit Hole. We can take the cheers and the applause and the accolades. Ryan, they love you, man. Listen, this big thunderous roar of applause. And of course, that literally is just two speakers making all that noise. But Ryan, in the grand scheme of things, takes solace in the fact that that's still a bigger crowd than Biden draws for his rally. So, 6 and 1/2 dozen of the other. But we're going to jump into Ryan's Rabbit Hole real quick. Guys, what we do with the Rabbit Hole is every single week, Ryan and I bonded early on over the fact that we are both repositories of useless information. And because of that, we are murdered to play a game of Trivial Pursuit with, but we are also those insufferable pricks that know a little something about everything. And so every week we take something that's going to put a little poke into your bread oven, kind of take you off the beaten path a little bit. something that you might not have explored before, a historical figure you might not be familiar with, a treatise or an essay that you might not be familiar with, a particular phenomenon that you might not have been intimately acquainted with before, and we just sort of go down that rabbit hole. You guys get to follow it down as far as you want. Sometimes it dovetails with what we are talking about on the sermon. Sometimes it does not. This one, I think, is going to wind up dovetailing with that sermon. But your search engine prompts are going to be Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. Leviathan, or the power of a commonwealth, ecclesiastic, and civil, shortened to Leviathan. That is the work of Thomas Hobbes. And the counterpoint to that was John Locke's second treatise on civil society and government. Hobbes and Locke saw things in a devoutly different way, and Leviathan was written during the English Civil War, and Hobbes's approach was to write that the social contract, you guys are familiar with the concept of a social contract, that if you are living as a part of the society, there is an implied mandate for you to accept the rules, norms, and mores of that society in question. Hobbes was of the opinion, as expressed in Leviathan, that it should be subject to the rule of an absolute sovereign, in this case, a king or a kingdom. Now, this is the thing. He was talking about an earthly king. He was talking about an earthly king and an earthly sovereign. The allusion, Leviathan was mentioned in the book of Job. For those of you guys who are walking in the faith, for those of you guys who are Christians, Leviathan was mentioned in the book of Job, and it ranks up there with some of the other titles, the elements of law and things like that. Locke had a very different view, and in his second treatise, he also dealt with the social contract, but he was more in line with the founders. Founders, of course, being the founders of the United States of America, in the fact that a government derives its just power from consent of the governed. Now, we could spend an entire hour here debating the subtleties and necessary benefits and drawbacks of either of the approaches, but with regard to Hobbes and Locke's, ne'er the twain shall meet. And I'm gonna leave it to y'all, because there are too many variables here. There are way too many variables here to get into with regard to which one you support and why, and what are the necessary benefits and drawbacks of each. I will tell you from my part that I tend to groove more towards John Locke in the sense of a government deriving its just power from consent of the governed, which, again, dealing with subtlety and nuance, would appear to be at odds with my Christian leanings and my Christian theology, because obviously when you are walking that path, you see the boss man as the divine sovereign. Again, that is the divine sovereign versus the earthly king sovereign that Hobbes was advocating for in Leviathan. Again, we could do this all freaking day, but I want for you guys to get in, and I think what is going to wind up happening here is that Ryan and I are going to wind up having several deep conversations over the course of this week about there is and so it begins civil disobedience ordained by the Messiah. Well, you could always, anytime that you are defying the established social order, a lot of people cloak it in the vestments of opposing it on a religious basis, as we talked about in the opener. Jonestown, right? Jim Jones was a socialist. He was an absolute socialist. Made no bones about that fact. But he cloaked his social ideology in religion, and it made it more accessible to the, how would we describe it, marginalized people that were quick to fall for the teachings of that cult. So again, it's going to keep coming back, and this is why it dovetails nicely with the focus of the program today. It's going to keep coming back to vigilance and clarity and discernment, that people are going to have to pay close attention to be able to walk in the truth. OG Mike D, hey Bart, we are thinking about doing a Waco topic show. We'd love to have you on with us for that one. It's going to be the show. Yes, Mike, send me a personal message. I would be, that is a subject of deep passion for me. So I would be honored, absolutely honored, to be a part of that program. Mike, send me a personal message. We will absolutely make that happen. That Waco program, we will absolutely make that happen. Again, jumping back into the rabbit hole, and it's interesting because, in fact, that comment actually sort of dovetails with what Ryan was just talking about with regard to civil disobedience as ordained by the Messiah. Because what was the fundamental tenet of the Branch Davidians and their particular offshoot from the Seventh-day Adventist Church? Of course, they got painted up as a cult. Of course, they got lied about in the media. Of course, there were some rabid mischaracterizations, but ultimately it was that they were going to do battle with Babylon. They were going to do battle with the established social order, and that conflict was, in fact, ordained by God. Which, of course, begs the question, if you're the FBI and you know that people are thinking that way, maybe rolling up on a cattle trailer with automatic weapons is not the best way to diplomatically address such an issue. Anyway, social contract, respect for a divine or an earthly sovereign. I want you guys to look this up. I want you guys to look up Hobbes' Leviathan, and I want you guys to look up Locke's Second Treatise. Take a look at that. That is going to be your rabbit hole for the week. And also, when we are doing these rabbit holes, guys, feel free, and I want to encourage you guys to do that. Let me pop this back up again. This is, let me see if I can find there. Here I am right there. That is my email address. Okay. So if there's something, you can hit me with a Facebook message. You can hit me with a personal message to Instagram, Twitter, whatever. If there's something you want to expound on or discuss deeper, you can hit me with that. But if you really have like several pages worth of essay that you want to lay on me, whether to tell me that you agree with what I'm saying, or whether you want to tell me that I'm wrong, or whether you say, hey man, I'm going with Ryan on this one, or whether, or whether you want to tell me to go fuck myself, whatever it is, write out that essay, and you can send it to me right here at reverendbart@hotmail.com. That is my email address. It has been my email address forever, and if you want to address any of these things, we're more than happy to cover that. Guyana Punch. And by the way, yes, it is the source of drinking the Kool-Aid. That is the expression. But just for the record, and I'm going to be a little bit of a conspiracy snob here. For the record, it was Flavor Aid at Jonestown, because that was a British version of Kool-Aid, and it was a lot more available in the Republic of Guyana. So it wasn't actually Kool-Aid, but that doesn't carry the same weight when you say, hey man, you're just drinking the Flavor Aid, bro. Like after your dabs or your bong hits, where you tell people that their flat earth stuff is ridiculous. Anyway, or whatever, their Tartarian mud flood. I don't know, man. I don't know. But anyway, that is the rabbit hole for the week, guys. Hobbes' Leviathan. And if you are going to look up Hobbes' Leviathan, you have to look up Locke's Second Treatise, because they are two great tastes that taste great together. So you can't look up one without the other. They don't function independently of each other. They are both, they are not even flip sides of the same coin, but they are completely different perspectives looking at the same exact social phenomena. So look up Hobbes' Leviathan and look up Locke's Second Treatise, and you will have a balanced aspect of getting across and taking a look at what the social contract means to you, independent of everything else. What do we got here? Okay, cool. Wanted to share something with you real quick. One of the bullet points that I put was the coolest Bart story that doesn't involve drugs or human fatalities. I had an adventure coming back from Texas. I was on my way through. I stopped, saw some very good friends of mine in Colorado. You guys probably saw the social media posts about that. We had a very good time catching up, just shooting the shit, talking about the general nature of things and where the world appears to be headed. It was a great meeting and long overdue. I had not seen Nick or Militia or Devin in forever, and it was really a good time. I headed out, was going on up through Montana, and struck a deer. Now, that's common enough in the Montana backcountry on a rural stretch of interstate highway. It's common enough to strike a deer. I hit it. I did not think that I hit it hard enough to kill it, so I dipped off at the first available turnaround, came back, circled around, because I was not going to leave it out there to suffer. In that cold, being severely wounded and everything like that. It's just not how I'm wired. I was going to go back and put one in his head. I drove back around to check out the deer, and it turns out that I had apparently hit him hard enough to kill him, or at least the impact spun him in such a way that it just completely laid open his abdominal cavity. He probably lived for 10, 15 seconds after that, but it dumped him. It was terrible, and he was very, very dead. I hope that he suffered as little as possible. In any case, I decided to go on up the road before I was going to check on the damage. I got to mile marker 153, decided to pull over there. I pulled over at mile marker 153. I get out to inspect the damage, and apparently the impact had done something to the wiring harness, because I always double check when I get out. I want to make sure that the power locks are all disengaged, and I got out and I went to the other side, and the other side was opening. The front door was opening, the back door was not. I close everything up. I come back around to the driver's side. I am locked out of my vehicle, and the vehicle is running. This is a drag, but thankfully I have my phone on me, and I call AAA. This is why I have AAA. AAA, what you're paying for is not any of their services. What you're paying for is peace of mind. So I'm on the phone with the AAA representative, and it suddenly occurs to me that there is another mechanical problem with this Subaru that I have not addressed that I should have, and that is that one of the cooling fans is out. It is never an issue when I am driving and there is air flowing over the radiator, but if it sits and idles for 15 to 20 minutes, it will climb up into the red and overheat. And while I am on the phone with the AAA representative, I look at the dashboard and I notice that it's already crawling up into the red, and I say, hey, look, how long is it going to take him to get out here? She said it could take him up to an hour. I'm like, I'm going to have to break into the car. I can't, because I'm about to lose the whole car, because, I'm going to have a paperweight. This motor's going to overheat. I'm going to have a freaking paperweight. I'm about to lose the whole car. It's easier for me to just bash out one of the windows. So I'm like, hey man, I'm going to have to break in. So I go to do that. I find out very quickly that automotive glass is a hell of a lot stronger than I had given it credit for. I hit hard. I am a big guy, and I hit hard, and I slammed my elbow repeatedly into that back driver's side window to no avail. All I wound up with was a nasty bruise on my elbow, and I was like, okay, fine. I get out my metal flashlight, which is always part of my everyday carry, and I start pounding this metal flashlight on that bottom corner where the window is supposed to break, and it doesn't even scratch it. And I am losing my flipping mind at this point. And of course, what do? I yell at God, right? Not in a screw you kind of way, but just in a why? Why is this? Have I not been walking the line? Have I not been living right? Have I not been making effort? And I'm screaming, and I momentarily lost my cool, and this voice came into my head, and it was just so calm and almost poking fun at me. It was basically like, oh, so you quit? You quit, tough guy? You quit? You're all out of options? Yeah, you're all out of options, right? You're just gonna quit. It occurs to me that the whole thing that set this off was a collision with a deer, and the piece that I had intended to dispatch the deer with was still in my pocket. This piece in particular, this Glock 43, loaded with very, very expensive hollow point people puncher ammunition. And I just thought, I still have my piece on me. I was like, okay, this isn't going to be pretty, but here we go. And I'm apologizing to the car. I'm sorry, Ivy. I'm so sorry. This is not personal. I'm trying to save you. I'm trying to save you. Just being utterly ridiculous. And I lined the pistol up with the two rear windows. I knew it was going to go straight through on both sides. And I shot my car in order to save it. Yeah, that's right. By the side of a road in Montana, I basically observed U.S. Vietnam foreign policy. I had to shoot the car in order to save it. So I put one through. It went through both of the rear, both of the rear windows. Splintered both of them. At that point, I was able to smash the one with my elbow, get into the car, and save it from overheating and get on down the road. Substantial use of duct tape made it possible for me to get home, but of course, I'm going to be finding broken glass in my stuff forever and ever and ever. And it was just a funny little roadside story that I had to shoot my car, and I just wanted to share that with you. Is there any teachable moment to come out of this? Is there any wisdom that someone could take for this? Yes. At least I'm really gonna bend it to try to establish there's some wisdom to take from this, and that wisdom would be never give up. Never give up. Had I not had the pistol, I probably would have run around trying to find a properly sized rock by the side of the road. Or something, but after the metal flashlight, I was just like, okay, forget it. And we went straight to 9mm glass breaker, and there it is. Couple of strategies: keep a spare hidden somewhere behind your rear bumper, as a dear friend of mine suggested, or one of those little magnetics up under. Keep a spare key hidden outside, or at the very least have one of those glass breakers on your keychain, because I did in fact have a glass breaker, and it was locked inside the running car because it's in there to break me out if I ever go over a bridge or whatever. So anyway, just wanted to share that little story with you. Sorry about your wagon, but thanks for the share. Clem, I knew you'd appreciate that, because like what I actually had a Clem moment when after I had the voice in my head. It was just, I knew that it wasn't like I heard you, but now it's become such an intrinsic part of my response mechanism that once I got through yelling and I heard that voice in my head, I just started, everything settled down. The shoulders came down. I started breathing, and it's like, okay, this is going to suck, but we got to do it. And here we go. Bang. But yeah, it wound up costing me about $400 for the glass, and another $300 for the single round of hollow point. That's a joke about ammo prices. It didn't actually cost me that much. But yeah, between the glass and the single hollow point, I think the total tab was about $1,200. No, so just an interesting, funny little Bart story I thought I would share with you guys. And then we are going to jump off into the rest of the bullet points. Milgram, Asch, Jonestown, and the current Zeitgeist headed into 2024. Let me kick these two tabs out to the end. Are you guys, listen, if you followed the sermon for any length of time, you were already at least moderately familiar with the works of Solomon Asch and Stanley Milgram. It's the pliability of people. And I got to thinking about it again. Bill Wade gifted me that book. Well, it's easy when you're standing 2 feet away from the target in question. It's not like we were running back and forth on the 2-5 drill, kicking buckets and whatnot. So it's considerably more accurate. Bill Wade gifted me that book, Live Not by Lies. And again, I read it. And then anytime I was driving around, I was listening to the audiobook version of it as well, just to reinforce. And it was a phenomenal book. But I started taking a look at all of these people who were resisting outright tyrannical governments. And guys, I've been abundantly clear. We're headed toward tyranny, but we're not there yet. We are headed toward persecution. We are targeted for persecution, but we are not there yet. Particularly as Christians, we are not persecuted. Not yet. Not yet. And a lot of people are like, well, man, you don't see what's... Yes, I see absolutely what is going on with the Merrick Garland Department of Justice. I see everything that is going on with them. The specific targeting of political enemies by this regime through the DOJ, through the ATF, through the FBI. I'm absolutely aware of everything that is going on. Yes, we are being targeted. Persecution, I shy away from that word because words mean things. Okay? Specificity counts. And when, again, I was flagging a little bit on that. I was like, well, maybe we are like close enough to persecution. And then I went back and I read Live Not by Lies. And I'm like, no, we're nowhere close. We're nowhere close. Not compared to the things that these people had to endure under totalitarian regimes, particularly communist totalitarian regimes, whether it was the Soviet Union, whether it was North Korea. We're talking about people who were being tortured and killed for their beliefs, sent off to gulags where your life expectancy could be measured in days to weeks, all for refusing to renounce Christ. So when I hear evangelicals over here in particular who still have a tremendous following and still have inordinate amounts of political power in some circles talking about that they are being persecuted, it's laughable. I'm sorry, guys. Are we being targeted? Absolutely. Persecuted? Shut up. Shut up. Because it comes off just as silly as it comes off just as silly as the trans brigade. It comes off just as silly as the trans brigade and the LGBT community. Yes, they have the full faith and backing of all of the social elements, whether it's entertainment, whether it's media, whether it's government, whether they have all the benefits and still are claiming persecution. So we're not quite as silly, but we're definitely in the same ballpark, right? They're crying as if you had killed a relative because they don't get first choice of who bakes their wedding cake. Screw yourself, man. Get bent. And I don't mean in that fun BDSM fashion show kind of way either. I mean straight up get bent, dude. Straight up get bent. You are not persecuted because one guy has the right to say, I'm not going to do this for you because it goes against my beliefs. You are not persecuted. On the flip side of that, you are not persecuted. You are targeted. If you are that baker and you have elected to make a principled stand, you are going to lose business. You are going to have to endure the slings and arrows of the legal system. You are going to have to deal with ridicule and everything else on social media. That is targeting. That is not persecution. Persecution is where you refuse to bow to the social order and agents of the government come to your place and drag you off to a boxcar. That's persecution. Persecution is where they come in and kidnap members of your family or kill them because you have elected to defy. Now, could we get there? Certainly. Is that where the push is headed? Absolutely. We are not there yet. So stop using words like persecution because A, it does a disservice to the people that are presenting that case, and B, it disrespects everybody that I read about in that book, Live Not by Lies. It disrespects every single person who did suffer legit persecution. This guy, Saint Gabriel Ergabaza, right? That guy was stuffed into a gulag because he set fire. He was canonized by the Georgian Orthodox Church. He was stuffed into a gulag because he had the audacity to say, you people are followers of Christ and you are bowing before these graven images, and set fire to pictures of great leader. We can still set fire as long as we don't do it on Capitol grounds, because somebody out there is saying J6, J6, and I hear you. I hear you, and I agree. As long as we don't do it on Capitol grounds, we can still set fire to a poster of Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris and not find ourselves in a federal prison camp over it. Okay. So when I'm drawing the distinction between targeting and persecution, I hope that you hear what I'm saying, and more to the point, I hope that you hear what I'm not. Are we all clear on that? Is it everybody tracking on that end? But here is the thing: if you own a rifle, you cannot be persecuted. Excellent point. Excellent point. As long as you killed the windows clean, no suffering. No, there was no no, Joey, there was no suffering at all. Not so much as a whimper. But yeah, Tom making an excellent point. If you own a rifle, you cannot be persecuted. So when I am talking about they are in the targeting phase, that is a big part of the targeting. Any of their common sense gun regulations, any of their so-called reasonable restrictions, they are not reasonable. Do not give up your guns, period. That is everyone's line in the sand, and if it is not, it should be. It is certainly mine. When they come for the guns, they get them. Bullets first. Sorry. Am I inciting violence? No. How is that inciting violence? I am telling you, if this, then that. If you swear to me that that is not your intention, oh, nobody's coming to get your guns. Well, and I say, well, that's good, because if someone were to try to come get my guns, there would be a violent confrontation. That is just a statement of fact. That is not incitement to violence. And if you are, in fact, being honest, and we know you're not, you're liars by your very nature, and you serve the father of lies, we know you're coming. We know you're coming. But if we were to take you at your word and you say nobody's coming, then how is that incitement to violence? Because, I mean, you're telling us that's not going to happen, right? I mean, you quote Australia as your example, like every other paragraph, but you keep telling us it's not going to happen. Whatever. Irrelevant. I am way off on a tangent right now. This is the thing, the pliability. With regard to targeting and persecution, where it gets dangerous and where it starts skirting the line of persecution is when they do have control of every major facet of social interaction, whether it is every major social media platform, but for three, right? The only three that they don't control are True Social, Twitter, and Rumble. That's it. Twitter, True Social, Rumble. And there are some people out there that seem to think that Elon Musk is actually a part of this. Full disclosure, I'm gonna be a tough sell for people talking shit about Saint Elon. I'm going to be a tough sell. I wear my biases out on my sleeve. I'm not trying to conceal anything. I think he may be one of the most important people walking the face of the planet right now, and we used to revere such men. But again, I digress. They own every facet of entertainment. They keep cranking the same woke garbage down our necks, and we keep refusing to buy it, and they keep doubling down. It is absolutely insane what they are doing. They own all of the news media, including, not even arguably anymore, Fox. OAN has some degree of autonomy left. Newsmax, Epoch Times have some degree of autonomy, but the left own everything else. And when I say the left, that's really an abbreviation for, because I don't want to say deep state because it's become so cliched. Let's say the regime, shall we? The power structure. They control it all. They control it all. So we are skirting the line where it's edging from us being targeted into us being persecuted, because at this point, when they start the persecutions, nobody's gonna, yes, there will be people to speak up. Yes, there will be people to resist. You just won't hear about it. You will not hear about it. Example, Bundy Ranch. Okay, Bundy Ranch and the Malheur, the Malheur standoff. You heard about it initially because they got to pump the right-wing extremists with guns taking over government property narrative. What you didn't hear about was when all of the other locals turned out and observed Thomas's admonition: if you own a rifle, you cannot be persecuted. And suddenly those federal agents that are used to bullying people found themselves in the crosshairs. They haven't got the balls for that anymore. I doubt that they ever did, at least past like the Elliot Ness era. I really don't think that they've had the balls to contend with that for a long time. They certainly weren't expecting to have to deal with it. And suddenly the media went very, very quiet. And when all of the Bundys and their associates were acquitted of all charges, the media was stone silent about that. Stone silent about that, because the last thing they need is for the peasants to figure out, hey, wait a minute, we can resist and we can win. So again, are we being targeted? Yes. Are we being persecuted? We're not there yet, people. We're not there yet. Please stop using the P word. It diminishes us collectively. If anyone sins because they do not speak up when they hear a public charge to testify regarding something they have seen or learned about, they will be held responsible. Yes. Yes. And the scripture goes on ad nauseum, ad infinitum with regard to that. You must ask, why does the lion avoid the porcupine, and why is the killer whale underwater? Damn it. Thomas, just leading me astray, brother, leading me astray. Better speak up, just saying. And yes, Ryan, I know the subtext of that is with regard to the issue in Israel as well. People who are followers and not admirers need to start speaking up. They need to start speaking up. My conscience is clear, right? The day that I got in to Texas, before I had even started working on this last crane gig, I did a special one-off sermon to state exactly where I stood on that. And all of the folks in my circle, whether it is Brother Sonny or Bill Wade, or whether it is, whether it's Deacon Mark, whether it's any of those cats, they've been abundantly clear on where they are about it. If you are an evangelical and you believe Israel at all costs because God's chosen people, I can forgive your silence. What I can't forgive is your ignorance. Okay? If you are aware of the distinction and you've read Revelation chapter 2 and 3, and you know about the synagogue of Satan, and you're still encouraging this, well, then we get to question number 2. Why are you encouraging it? Why are you encouraging it? Are you encouraging it because you're willfully ignoring the fact that these people are not God's chosen? Or are you encouraging it on the standpoint of civilization versus savagery? That is an argument that I will at least entertain, okay? As long as that argument ends with, let them handle it themselves, I will at least entertain that argument. Why? Because they may be an ethno-state of Christ deniers and, by some observation, Christ killers. They may be, but they're still the closest thing to civilization in that entire region, and they are being set upon by goat-humping savages. So if they decide to use white phosphorus and cluster bombs and all the things that we have given them, the blood is on the hands of the regime. The blood is not on my hands unless I go along with what the regime has done, and I have vehemently opposed that from day one. If they choose to roll through there with bulldozers and kill every last man, woman, and child, that scale of human suffering is not something that any civilized person should endorse. But for the sake of honesty, because the number one admonition is to walk in truth, I will not lose one bit of sleep over every last resident of Gaza being bulldozed into the dirt. I just won't. Sorry. You're free to disagree with me. You're free to call me a despicable human being for feeling that way. But my retort to that is, if they were such wonderful people, Jordan would be taking them in. Syria would be taking them in. Egypt would be taking them in. Any civilized or semi-civilized nation, the Arab world, would be taking them in. Turkey would be taking them in. Nothing. Nothing. Not one of those places. Culturally, allegedly, deeply connected, the Brotherhood of Islam and all that nonsense, None of those countries will take them in. Where do you think these savages are going to end up? Where do you think? You don't think the next Democratic administration is just going to throw open the arms of America and being, come on in? We did it with the Afghans, didn't we? After that disastrous withdrawal, we didn't vet any of those people. We're not vetting any of the people at the border. We have terror cells inside. Thank you, Dennis, just in time, mentioning Eagle Pass. We have terror cells inside the United States. Even FBI Director Wray had to admit it. Okay? So no, I'm not in favor of them doing that on the basis of God's chosen people, but on the basis of these savages screwed with us and we're going to make sure they never do it again. Okay. I'm all right with it. I really am all right with it. And I'm just being straight. I don't stand with Israel. I don't. No, I don't. But I'm totally willing to look the other way while they pound savages into the dust from which they were spawned. I'm totally okay with that. So long as not one drop of American blood has to be spilled overseas for this freaking folly. I got way off track, didn't I? Yeah, I got way off track. That is, wow, it's so out of character for me too. Yeah, anyway. Let my people go is no longer a thing. Isn't that how Israel got back into Palestine? No one, yep, right. Okay. And that's fair. But you know what, Ryan? I had nothing to do with the Balfour Declaration or the UN resolution. I had nothing to do with that. And as long as we're talking about, and as long as we're going to play that game, and Ryan, I know you're in lockstep with me on this one. And Charlie, I see you, little smart ass. As long as we're going to play that game, Ryan, who are, okay, well, they are the indigenous people, so everybody else has to F off. Okay. Who are the indigenous peoples of Europe? Right. Who are the indigenous peoples of Northern Europe? Who are the indigenous peoples of the UK? So I know this isn't, and Ryan, let me be clear. I know this isn't the argument that you're making. This is the argument that you're making. But so many people on that, oh, well, the indigenous people of Palestine side, okay, cool. If it's either leave it to the indigenous people, like they say, which somehow works for the Palestinians and for the First Nation people here on the North American continent, that argument somehow holds. But when it comes to the flood of savages destroying Europe and the UK, then suddenly indigenous peoples counts for nothing. And again, Ryan, I know that isn't the argument that you're making, but you understand why I get so frustrated when I hear that argument and I have that knee-jerk reaction. I had nothing to do with the Balfour Declaration. I had nothing to do with the UN resolution. I had nothing to do with all the atrocities that the Israelis committed when they were on that expansionist trek through Palestine. I had nothing to do with that. The flip side is I also had nothing to do with 56, 74, and the one other year that the Palestinians literally turned down a two-state solution. Because from the river to the sea, and again, getting back to the ideological quandary of the whole thing, how ironic that the same people who have been calling everybody to the right of Chairman Mao for the last 6 years been calling us Nazis, and suddenly they're totally down with killing 6 million Jews. Isn't that funny? Breathe. I'm sorry, Clem. I know you're watching, bro. I lost it for a minute. Just drop shoulders. All right. All right. So, returning. The absolute dumbest people on the planet. LGBT for Palestine. Yeah, okay. And you know what, Roman? I'm gonna give you Clovis for song keeper. Damn it, Ryan. The absolute dumbest on the people, LGBT for Palestine. Well, here is my retort to that, Roman, because I'm with you on that. I'm with you. But if we're going to talk about two things that are ideologically contradictory as a matter of necessity, how much dumber is Queers for Palestine, right? Is that really that much more inconsistent than evangelical Christians for the people that murdered Jesus? I mean, as long as we're talking inconsistencies, and again, Roman, just like Ryan, I know that isn't the argument that you're making, but these are the things that just make me shake my head and throw things every single week. Nobody has thought this all the way through, because there's what's that? I can see a good argument. You weren't there. How was that sponge of vinegar? Did you cast lots too? No, I was the guy with the spear, bro. I was the guy with the spear, and I will make you a deal. I will make you a deal on the head of that spear of Longinus, because I know the Fuhrer and his minions have been looking for it since the 1930s. So clever. This is a coffee discussion. Let me finish the presentation, and we'll have this talk. People are pliable, and again, they will buy things. Getting back to the bullet points, the Asch experiment, the Milgram experiment, Jonestown, they will buy these things because they are pliable. And they are even more pliable when religious elements become involved. There were no religious elements to the Asch experiment. Solomon Asch, for those of you who have followed the program for any length of time, you should be at least tangentially familiar with the work of Solomon Asch, because we covered it here a number of times over the course of the past few years. Solomon Asch did the conformity experiment, where everybody else in the room except the test subject was in on it, and they presented there were three lines, A, B, and C, and then there was one line off to the side. And you had the one line off to the side, and either A, B, or C was the same length as the one off to the side. Now, here's the thing. The test subject didn't know it, but everybody else in the room was in on the experiment, and they all said that it was the wrong one. All of them said that it was the wrong one. And what they found, I'm going to have to punch it up to look at the exact percentages, but it was a disturbing number of people that went along. The number of times each participant conformed to the majority view. Now, you are sitting there and you know that everybody else in the room is picking the wrong answer. You know it. But rather than go on your instinct, and rather than go on what you know to be true, which is what all of us would like to think that we would do, and I would like to think the percentage would be a little bit higher among my friends and my fans, but I could totally be wrong on that. Solomon Asch measured the numbers of times each participant conformed to the majority view. On average, and listen closely, 1/3 of the participants who were placed in this situation went along and conformed with the clearly incorrect majority on the critical trials. 1/3. Pick the three people that you know best. One of them would have gone along with the crowd. Pick the three people who are on the periphery of your circle of friends, people that you work with, or your bosses, or anyone that you interact with on a daily basis. The person who sells you your cigarettes at the Quickie Mart, whatever. 1 out of every 3 went along. Clearly incorrect majority, but even though they were clearly incorrect, the operative word there is majority. Over the 12 critical trials, about 75%, and this is where I would like to think the percentages are higher among my friends and my fans, but I could totally be wrong. This is the thing. 75% of participants conformed at least once, right? So they go through this trial 12 times. 3 out of every 4 participants conformed at least once. And then they let their balls drop and went, wait a minute, dude, okay, look, man, I went along the first time, but this is bullshit. You guys are wrong. You guys are wrong. And at some point, I got to stand for it. Okay, 32% of participants went along. 75% across the board went along at least once. At least once. Just to say, oh, well, I don't want to oppose the majority. And then the second time and third time, they go, okay, wait a minute. Look, they're clearly freaking wrong. This is how bad ideologies take root. This is how cults take root. This is how totalitarian regimes take root. This is how the trans insanity took root. Participants who were placed in this situation, 75% conformed at least once. And here's the thing, 25% of participants never conformed. Never conformed. Now, as with every proper experiment, there's got to be a control group. In the control group, there was no pressure to conform. In the control group, they just did the quiz and people just, pick, there was no pressure for them. It was done by secret ballot. Only 1% of participants gave the wrong answer in the control group. So the Asch experiments very, very clearly and irrefutably showed damn it, Ryan. This is why I'm glad I go for like 5 or 10 minutes without looking, because I know he's going to distract me. Only 1% of the participants gave the wrong answer in the control group. Out of the people who were being duped, only 25%, 1 out of every 4, never conformed. What did I talk about in the opener? We would all like to think that we're that 1 out of 4. We'd all like to think that we're Giles Corey. We'd all like to think that. We'd all like to think that we're St. Gabriel here. We'd all like to think that. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of us aren't as hardcore as we think we are with regard to that stuff, if we really, really, really got confronted. Now, I can only speak for myself and those in the inner circle, but I know that there are some circumstances where I could be swayed. Things that play to my preconceived notions, things that play to my confirmation bias, things that play to my own cognitive dissonance. I work to remain vigilant against having that cognitive dissonance, but none of us are above it. None of us are above it. And the minute that we get to thinking that we are giving into what? We are giving into the original sin of pride, from which grows all other sins and all other failings. And beyond this, all this vanity and vexation of spirit. You knew I was going to go to Ecclesiastes after that, didn't you? But here's the more disturbing part. So again, why? Why did they do that? They were interviewed, and most of them said they didn't really believe their conforming answers, but they had gone along with the group for fear of being ridiculed or thought peculiar. Okay, so that was done in the 1950s. Do you think that that power of ridicule has gotten greater or less in that period of time? Don't kid yourself. Do you think peer pressure has gotten stronger or weaker in that period of time? Don't have any illusions about that. If you have read a single study about the influential nature of modern mass media, modern social media, you know it's gotten far worse. Which means that for as bad as the Solomon Asch experiments revealed, it's infinitely worse. Infinitely worse by now. Bet on that. If you had any remaining doubts, look how we went along with the COVID madness. Look how people continue to go along with the transgender madness. All of the viral videos where they will ask people, do you think a 12-year-old person should be able to buy cigarettes? Of course not. Do you think a 12-year-old person should be able to get a tattoo? Oh, no way. They can't judge those kind of things. Do you think a healthy 12-year-old boy should be able to tell a surgeon to cut off his cock? Oh, well, absolutely. Absolutely. They don't really believe that. They don't believe that for a damn second. But they're afraid of being ridiculed. They're afraid of being labeled what? They're afraid of being othered. They're afraid of being canceled. They're afraid of losing their jobs. This is the power of conformity. The Milgram experiment, of course, and this is, I lean on Milgram harder than I lean on Asch, because it is what people do. Asch reveals what people will do to avoid ridicule in crowd settings without the trappings of authority. You're in a room full of strangers in the Asch experiment. You're in a room full of strangers and you don't want to be the odd man out. So you'll go along with it at least once, and then maybe you find your spine and your balls drop. Or maybe you're part of that 25% that never goes along. That's when you're just in a room full of strangers. And the only power is that social power of ridicule. The reason I lean harder on Milgram is because Milgram doesn't outright present authority, but it presents the illusion of authority, and how many people are willing to go along with that. Now, I'm going to, again, just to make sure that I have the numbers right, because sooner or later somebody goes, well, no, it wasn't that many. That many people didn't. You know, the classic, nuh-uh, he explained, because that's the level of intellectual maturity we're dealing with. The Milgram experiment, let me just lay it out for you. Basically, people were at a control panel, and there was a man in a lab coat with a clipboard. There was a man in a lab coat with a clipboard. A man in a lab coat with a clipboard. That was it. No badge, no gun, no cudgel, no big bruiser of a guy standing over going, you better keep flipping them switches. No, one guy in a lab coat with a clipboard. And he wasn't allowed to force you. He wasn't allowed to berate you or harangue you. He was only allowed to repeat the same prompts. You must continue. The experiment must continue. The experiment requires that you continue. Wasn't allowed to threaten them. Wasn't allowed to cajole them. The experiment requires that you continue. The experiment requires that you continue. Well, he's got a lab coat and a clipboard. Certainly, he's got some authority. This is what they found. Let me give you how the experiment worked. The guy in the lab coat with the clipboard would ask a guy on the other side of a wall a question. If he got the right answer, he moved on to the next question. If he got the wrong answer, the test subject was instructed to administer an electric shock. The electric shock panel went to increasing and increasing dosages, clearly marked green, yellow, red, all the way up to potentially lethal. The experiment found that every participant went up to 300 volts, the edge of the red. Every participant, without exception, went to 300 volts. And 65% went to the full 450 volts, which, as marked on their control panel, was a lethal charge. The guy on the other side of that wall, as it turns out, wasn't really getting electrocuted. He was an actor who was working with the experiment. But if you go back and watch the films of this stuff, those actors were pouring it on, screaming, for the love of God, please stop. I'm going to die. This hurts. Please stop. Please stop. And the only thing that guy in the lab coat with the clipboard was allowed to say is, the experiment requires that you continue. That was it. And based on that, every single participant went up to 300 volts, and 65% of them went the full Monty to 450, killing the subject in the next room, who they never met. But tell me again how you'd be Giles Corey. Tell me again how you'd be St. Gabriel. The minute you get to thinking that and you lose your vigilance, you let that pride take over and think that you're above it, that's when they exploit your weaknesses. Well, you think I'm holding myself up like I'm some pure guru and that I couldn't be swayed? Get bent. People that know me well enough to know what my biases are, know where they lie, know how to persuade me. And under the right set of circumstances, if I don't stay lined out, praying for discernment, if I don't stay psychologically focused and aiming for clarity, I could be one of that 65%. If it is a group that I have a predisposed hatred for, what is to say that I wouldn't take it all the way up to 450 volts for some Antifa maggot? Am I that principled? Get bent. No, I'm not. I'll be the first to admit. Just like you, if there's a group that you hate, you'd be willing to go the full Monty. Part of that clarity and discernment and part of letting go of that pride is admitting where our weaknesses are. It's the ones that hold themselves up as pure creatures of virtue get sucked up in their own pride, their head up their ass with their own ego, and they are the ones that find themselves vulnerable. You guys tracking? And that's independent, by the way. That's independent of the two big ones. What are the two big motivators? What are the two big motivators? Fear and lies? Well, that's two. Politics and religion. Speaking of things that are based in fear and in lies. Politics and religion. The Asch experiment, Solomon Asch, had no connection to politics or religion. The works of Stanley Milgram had no connections to politics or religion, no ties whatsoever. Granted, the genesis of the Milgram experiments were to try to figure out how a civilized people like the Germans could be led to follow down into tyranny. Then again, funny little thing, there was never a follow-up wondering how the proud people, the strong people, the resilient people of Russia could be led into Soviet tyranny. That the proud culture of the Chinese that had endured for thousands of years could be led into Chinese communism. Never a follow-up on that, is it? Milgram experiments were done figuring out how white Europeans could be led down the trail to Nazism. You can bet your ass there won't be any university experiments looking into how those Antifa maggots can be led to beat up kids and old people in the name of a hammer and sickle flag, which has easily 10 times the body count of the German with the funny mustache. Why, if I didn't know better, I'd swear that was by design. Sorry, just fitting my tinfoil hat. Well, let's get into politics and religion since we're there. Jonestown. Jonestown and the Salem witch hunts. Jonestown and the Salem witch hunts. Because you know what? The Salem witch hunts were just as political as they were religious. When you really do a deep dive on the Salem witch hunts, they were trying to get rid of one pastor. They were trying to remove his access to the rectory to where he wouldn't have, to where he wouldn't have his own home anymore. There was politics involved in that. There were the politics of the king. Politics of the king inside the context. Public speaking, so no risk other than ridicule. And James, that's an excellent point. That is an excellent, excellent point. That is why. And you know what? We could probably do a whole sermon on that. The reason why public speaking is still the number one fear. No risk other than ridicule. People don't want to be the odd man out. Just have him again, please. Kratom, ODG, ODG here, Subaru, Bart and Bart will fry. Right? Right? If you're, yeah. Yeah, they know how to swing me. They know how to take me all the way up to that 450 volt mark. I mean, internet scammer in that room, and watch how fast most of us would slam that button without being told. You're right, brother. You're right. We can all see it. You face them with a worse tyranny than what we notate, right? Life was objectively worse before Hitler for Germans. And of course, Ryan St. Germain was the same. He just took the outcast women and put them to use. Perfectly fair observation. Getting back, Salem witch trials, just as political as it was religious. When politics and religion based in fear and lies are used as a control mechanism. Politics and religion based in fear and lies being used as a control mechanism. Does any of that sound vaguely familiar? Politics under the trappings of religion based in fear. Fear of what? Fear of the devil, fear of witchcraft, but based in lies. What do you mean lies? Oh, a bunch of teenage girls trembling and faking convulsions. You know, the way people fake Tourette's syndrome on freaking TikTok videos now. It's everywhere. We got to be afraid of it. And the only thing that'll save us from the power of the devil is to give into that control based on fear and based on lies. Salem witch trials, 100%. Cloaked in religion, but based in politics and fear and lies. And look what they were able to do. People died. At the hands of the crown. At the hands of their neighbors. Don't take me, it was Giles Corey. Don't take me, it was Goody Proctor. And again, we'd all like to think that we would be Giles Corey. A little something about Giles Corey. The reason why Giles Corey nutted up the way that he did is because he knew if he pled guilty, he would have no inheritance. His land, his home would not be passed on to his sons. That's why he found the spine. That's why he found the balls to face his death the way that he did. We'd all like to think that we'd be Giles Corey, laying between those two heavy boards with them stacking rocks on us and just laying there, going out like a G. More weight. Like a gym bro on leg day. More weight. We'd all like to think that. See, but Giles Corey had a reason to keep his mouth shut. He knew if he pled guilty, he could save himself, but he'd have no inheritance for his kids, and he would probably be hung anyway. He refused to plead, which was his right under common law at the time. He refused to plead because he had motivation. He was trying to protect the inheritance for his family. How many of us don't even have family? How many of us don't even have someone close to us that we would be willing to make that sacrifice for? I don't mean us within the standpoint of the people that are here. Some of the people that are here, certainly. But out in the world, the grazers, the herd, look how disconnected we are. We don't know our neighbors. In East Germany, 1 out of 3, when the Iron Curtain came down, they found out 1 out of 3 was working as an informant for the Stasi in some capacity. And these are people that knew their neighbors. We have no connection. And we think it can't happen here. Cloak it in fear, cloak it in lies, cloak it in religion. Based upon religion, be intellectually honest. Yeah, you'd be hard pressed. You'd be very, very hard pressed. You'd be very, very hard pressed. And this is the retort that I would give you, Ryan. And I'm going to head off my own retort. Mid-retort, I'm going to head it off. Every one of those totalitarian regimes under communism denied religion. Outright denied it. Any kind of religion took away from the power of the state. So the retort to my retort is the state was their religion. And that settles that. The Soviet Union, they said that their politics weren't based on religion. They did everything they could to eliminate religion. Communist Chinese, same thing. All the persecution against the Tibetans, against the Uyghur Muslims, all based in, persecuting religion. We don't want any religion. Religion is an enemy of the party. It's an enemy of the state. So the state had become their religion. So in that sense, yes, it was still based in religion. And that's exactly where we are. And further, right? Thank you. And I knew where you were headed with that. I knew where you were headed with that. That's exactly where we are in this country right now. That is exactly where we are in this country right now. I thank God, even for the sake of my secular friends who aren't taking a walk with me, I thank God that we have hit a tipping point, and I see a cultural awakening happening. People that I would never ever expect to come back to the faith. Because why? Even when a lot of people didn't believe in Catholic doctrine, it held Europe together culturally and spiritually. Even when people didn't believe in Protestant doctrine, it held early America together culturally and spiritually. And now that we have abandoned one, because there is a void in the human soul that needs to be filled with that, none of us are beyond it. Some of us have less of a hole than others. But we've all got that gap that needs to be filled with something. And if we do not have some, and it doesn't have to be religion, it could be any sort of structure, any sort of ritual structure. You get up in the morning and you work out every day. You get up in the morning and you masturbate every day. That's not the most constructive thing. But it's going to fill the gap. We're seeing America wake never too late for a national. Europa erwacht. No, sorry. Hand just twitching. Yes, but it. Acting that end scene out of Strangelove. Anyway, well, Ben Shapiro would say that ethno-states are very, very bad. You know what I mean, gang? Like, ethno-states are terrible, gang. I mean, except for, like, the Israel thing, because, like, we've been, like, persecuted. And did I mention my wife was a doctor? Yeah. Sorry, it just doesn't carry the same weight if I'm not wearing a freaking yarmulke like that little elf. Anyway. I didn't need to know that, Joe. I didn't need to know that. Point being, we fill that gap. If we don't fill it with religion, if we don't fill it with some kind of structure, then it will be filled in by secular powers or the state. The state will become the religion. Jonestown. Let's talk about Jonestown. And while we're at it, because I'm going to go through some of the, I'm going to go through some of the graphics that I had coming in. Right? Politics, religion, lies. When religion becomes the trapping for the downtrodden, for the marginalized, like we see the state becoming now for welfare recipients, for the marginalized people of color and the indigenous, First Nations, LGBTQIA plus PX39. The state has become their religion. The state has become their religion, and that's dangerous. Because the entertainment industry, again, when the woke religion, let's call it what it is, when the woke religion controls the largest parts of American culture, academia, entertainment, they have an F-ton of money to throw. What are we looking back at right now? What is this? That's over 900 dead people that drank the Flavor Aid. But how did he arrive there? Do a deep dive on Jonestown and his roots. Started off in Indiana, just another tent revival preacher. Now, are there conspiracy theories that the CIA was involved? Yes, there are. Could you make a case for that? Absolutely, you could. Part of what I'm about to mention is going to make some of that case for you. That it could be the deep state, that it could be the regime, that it could be any number of things. But what I will pass along is this. You had a religious organization playing to the marginalized people, playing to the ones that society had left behind, filling in the role of the family for them, filling in the role of religion for them. And as a result, they became very, very well-moneyed. And when they became well-moneyed, guess what? When you have that much money and an army of foot soldiers on the ground who are willing to go and do your bidding, whether that is stuffing ballot boxes, or signing petitions or burning federal buildings in Portland, when you have an army of foot soldiers with the fervor of religious crusaders on your side, you become a political force to be reckoned with. And what did Jim Jones do with that? He approached these lefty pervo pedophile degenerates, George Moscone and Harvey Milk. Oh, Harvey, what a hero. First openly gay politician. Let's just forget about the fact that he was diddling teenagers. It's all about liberation. It's all about Pride Week. Go to hell. Harvey Milk was a scumbag and a pedophile. Okay? Alfred Kinsey was a scumbag and a pedophile. Okay? But he did some monumental research that was very, very important. Yes, so did Masters and Johnson. Masters and Johnson were both, wait for it, scumbags and pedophiles. But again, they're celebrated. I digress. Jonestown. Before these people wound up part of a huge pile of bodies in Guyana, they were doing legwork for these two degenerates, who gave us, in turn, this degenerate who happened to walk in on the dead bodies of these two degenerates when they were shot by one of their own. Oddly enough, getting back to that regime connection, exactly 9 days after this happened. What? Ooh. Put on your own tinfoil hat. I'm not going to walk you down that road. But it is kind of odd. These guys came to power on the backs of these guys and both wound up executed. Close range shots to the head 9 days after this happened. And who discovered the bodies? Oh, this sea hag who remained a thorn in our political side all the way up until this year when she was mercifully removed from circulation. Coming out of the same, taking the money and the political support from Jim Jones and his followers. Oh, who are we looking at? Who are we looking at? Yep, that's right, boys and girls. Willie Brown. Willie Brown, still a force in San Francisco politics. I mean, I'm sure that these two would have remained a force in San Francisco politics if they hadn't been, well, assassinated. Executed. I'm sorry, poor choice of words. This hag stayed in Congress even after she had ceased to function. Even after she had pulled a Stephen Hawking, they kept rolling her out for House votes. Willie Brown stays active. And who was it that was puffing Willie Brown's pecker and built a political career out of it? Oh, wait. Yeah, the cackling whore on the right. So even though 900 plus people died in 1978, the left-wing politics that army of foot soldiers brought into power is like a gift that keeps on giving. Now, am I trying to tie Kamala Harris to Jonestown? Of course not. I doubt she even knows about Jim Jones. I doubt that she's ever entertained a complex thought in her life. She's a dimwit. She's East Indian and Jamaican, which somehow equals black. I'm still not sure how that works. The point of the matter is, this one on the right, during the fentanyl Floyd riots of 2020, organized a legal defense fund to bail out rioters. What was it I was saying about an army of foot soldiers? What was it I was saying about an army of foot soldiers and what they can do and the kind of political power force that they can be? BLM as a fundraising organization because of a bunch of stupid, guilty white people. Black lives definitely matter. I better give them some money. BLM buying large mansions. They have yet to do one damn thing for the black community. You are a sucker and a fool. But you gave them the money. Where do you think that money went? Maybe got filtered through shadow organizations, maybe got filtered through front companies to, I don't know, the election campaign of an addled cadaver that never left his basement. Am I getting conspiratorial? I don't know. Am I? Google's free. You follow it up. You decide what you want to do. I'm not your freaking guru. Do you think Antifa is any less an army of foot soldiers than the followers of Jim Jones, realistically? In fact, I'll go you one better. I think they're probably more effective because Antifa is actually willing to commit acts of violence to people other than themselves. But they are an army of foot soldiers. BLM, an army of foot soldiers. They are part of a political machine. And what are they rooted in? Jonestown had the trappings of Christianity tied to socialism. For Antifa and BLM, socialism is the religion. The state is the religion, and they are no less an army of foot soldiers for that fact. Do the dive. See via Jonestown. Yes. CIA, yeah, the Manson Group and the Ashbury Clinic. And yeah, we can get into that. In fact, well, you know what? I think you just picked a rabbit hole for next week. If you're cool with that, I'm cool with that. Right? Rabbit hole for next week. You good with that? Yeah, and the brothels. Well, you know, some of the brothels actually dated back to Operation Artichoke and MK Delta and MK Naomi as well. Anyway, she probably has forgotten. This is the point. When it is based in fear and when it is based in lies, and then it becomes tied to politics and religion. When it is based in fear and it is based in lies, and your politics is your religion. The state is your God. The state is your higher power. You are looking at, and that's why it's so funny when left-wing organizations like NPR and some of the other left-wing think tanks, they always want to make the comparison to right-wing organizations behaving like cults, but deny the outright ties of the political left to places like Jonestown. When it comes to religion, they always want to bring up the Salem witch trials and McCarthyism, but never want to point out the fact that McCarthy was largely borne out in every accusation that he made about the communists that had infiltrated the Defense Department. Should we talk about Alger Hiss? Should we talk about Julius and Ethel Rosenberg? They like to compare witch hunts when they're talking about McCarthy. They like to talk about, religious witch hunts when it comes to the Salem witch trials, but they ignore the political aspects of that, particularly when they are performing along the same line. Particularly when they are performing along the same witch hunt, and politics is their religion. Are you guys tracking me on this? So again, getting back to what we covered in the opener, Rob Dreher, we are coming to that point. American Christians are going to have to come to terms with the brute fact that we live in a culture, one in which our beliefs make increasingly little sense. What is he? Is he saying that we've lost it? No. That's not what he's saying at all. That by rooting ourselves in the things that have always mattered, by rooting ourselves in the things that have always held Western civilization together, as the rest of the civilization crumbles around us, that our beliefs make increasingly little sense. We speak a language that the world more and more either cannot hear or finds offensive to its ears. Why? Because it is being rendered offensive by design. Because of mischaracterizations. And I got to call out I got to call out Kierkegaard's admirers here. And because a lot of us are piss poor vessels for the message. Y'all feeling me? I'm not talking about the outright hypocrites, the ones that go and drink themselves stupid every Friday and then stagger into church on Sunday and pray for forgiveness. I'm not talking about those outright hypocrites. I'm talking about the evangelicals in this particular, for one particular example. I'm talking about the evangelicals who don't even know what the Talmud has to say about their Messiah and his denial, the denial that he even is the Messiah. They don't even know, but they're standing with Israel. Oh, yes, sirree, Bob. We love dead kids. Let's send them cluster munitions and white phosphorus. And again, I'm not holding myself on a level of conscience above that. I don't care. Radical Islam is savagery. It is an existential enemy of Western civilization, and as such, I will not lose any sleep if every last man, woman, and child is eliminated, and I don't care by what means. Scalded alive by white phosphorus, shredded by shrapnel from cluster munitions. I literally don't care. Okay? But where I draw the line is getting behind it going, Jesus has decided that these people have to kill these other people. Really? Because those chosen, Sparky, say that your Savior is a false prophet and his punishment for that is boiling in a vat of shit for eternity. But get ready and go stand with them, Goyim. Oh, better be a good servant. You are being a piss poor example. You are doing more harm to the message and to the faith and to the carpenter himself and his will than you are good. And you're doing it based in thinking that you're aligning yourself with scripture, even though people put out the scripture verses in front of you that you can look at that will refute you in a second, that they put the Sanhedrins from the Talmud in your face and say this is what they actually say, and you won't even bother to look at it because it's easier for you to play white hat, black hat. I don't stand with Israel. I stand with the boss and the carpenter kid. I stand with Christ. I stand with Christendom. I stand with the West. Tangent. You are cloaking your fear and your lies in religion. You are no different than the leftists that profited from Jonestown. You are being good little foot soldiers for the chosen, good little Goyim for the Zionists, tripping along doing what you're told, which is what you're supposed to do, Goyim. Haven't you read the Talmud? Don't cloak your shit in religion. Don't do it. You want to stand for something based on civilization versus savagery. You want to do something, stand on principle, stand on an idea that you've actually thought out. Because I'm going to tell you something, just like Queers for Palestine is the dumbest, most self-contradictory thing ever, Evangelicals for Israel, right up there. Socialists for Jesus drinking Flavor Aid in Guyana, right up there. Y'all like to think that you can separate yourself from this, but the absolute root prospect of all of it is exactly the same. Fear and lies getting roped up into politics and religion. And when your politics is your religion, that line is that much thinner. Easy to trip and fall over that line. I urge you to stay vigilant, to think for yourself. Why? Because the minions of the deceiver have already done their work and you're already halfway there. These same news whores, these same Sinclair functionaries, these are the minions of the deceiver, and you are already halfway there, even if you think yourself not. And if you think yourself not, chances are you're even further along than you thought. Because that's your pride, son. That's that pride. Oh, it can't happen to me. I'm above that. I'm so much smarter than that. I can't be taken in. That's that pride, man. Lucifer was God's best and brightest, and he was cast out of the throne room for that very freaking sin. You better get that ego in check, son. You better get that ego in check and realize who you're actually serving, or else you're serving yourself, and that doesn't end well. Your mileage may vary. That's just my thoughts on it. But I'll end with Dreyer. It is better to choose to know the painful truth. You hear me, evangelicals? You hear me? It is better to choose to know the painful truth. Why don't you read that Talmud? Rather than settle on a comforting lie. Oh, we're standing with the chosen. Resolve to look for and to accept the truth no matter how much it hurts. Nothing built on lies lasts. Nothing built on lies lasts. You are of your father, the devil, and your father's work you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning. When he speaks of a lie because he is a lie and the father of it. Nothing based on lies lasts. So you had better be willing to swallow that ego and deal with some very, very uncomfortable truths going forward. A lot of your most cherished beliefs may get yanked right out from under you like a rug, and you had better be ready to stand up, and thank God for that. Thank you for making me fall flat on my face because it brought me that much closer to the truth. Thank you for making me fall flat on my face and realize how full of shit I was, how arrogant I was, and bringing me back down to a proper level to where I can interact and be a proper vessel. Y'all feel me? That's not me. I'm not trying to glorify myself here. This isn't about me. I am not your guru. I'm barely a vessel, and I'm trying every day to be a better one. Cleaning up my mental environment, cleaning up my physical environment, working to be a better vessel. So this ain't about me. Don't make it about you. Don't make it about you by thinking you're above it. Don't make it about you by believing that it can't happen to you. The number one of the 7 deadlies is pride. Final bullet point. Lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. All of these feed each other. All of these feed each other. They are self-perpetuating. But at the root of every one is pride. What's the root of envy but pride? What is at the root of envy but pride? He's got something and I don't feel like he deserves it because I'm better than him. I'm gonna be a hater. I'm gonna try to undermine him because he didn't deserve what he got, let alone that he worked for it or that he was blessed with it. Which is, in either way, it's none of your damn business. What is at the root of envy but pride? What is at the root of sloth but pride? Oh, wait a minute. People like you and I, we look at that and we say, hey, man, I don't want to look like the product of sloth, dude. I don't want to be a bloated freaking walrus. I'm going to get my ass under some iron. Yeah. But that's different. The person who's like truly in sloth is being enabled by the current cultural zeitgeist. And what is at the root of that? Pride. Oh, you're fine just the way you are. Healthy at any size. Don't work too hard on that. That smacks of effort. What is at the root of that? Pride. I'm fine just the way that I am. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're a bloated freaking lazy walrus. Get up off your dead ass and do something. No, I'm fine just the way that I am. What's at the root of that but pride? Greed? Greed? What's the root of greed but pride? Why are you greedy? Why are you greedy? Why are you covetous? As long as we're getting back to the commandments, if we want to go Old Testament fire and brimstone here, why do you covet? Why do you covet? I want all that money. I want all that money. I want all that money. Why? Why? See, why? So you can tuck it away and keep wearing, secondhand blue jeans and red ass t-shirt and driving a used car? Nope. You want the best of everything. And there's nothing particularly wrong with that. Hey man, I could have settled for a high point. I went with a Glock. I could have settled for a bullshit phone. I went for a rugged Caterpillar. Like, I get that, right? But greed for its own sake. What are you doing? Don't pull Elon out of your ass on this. What about Elon, man? We're just going to go. He is advancing the species. He is doing things for the planet. He is doing things for free speech that politicians and religions have abandoned for generations. But leaving him out of it. I don't hate on Elon for making his money because he hasn't even bought a house. What is at the root of most greed? Pride. Pride, pride. I want to drive the best car. I want to live in the best house in the best neighborhood. Gluttony, gluttony. What's at the root of that? Pride. Wait a minute. I thought that's like sloth, man. You don't want to be a big old bloated. How can you be proud of that? No, because you feel like you, little piggy, your needs come before everybody's. Your needs come before everybody's. I'd like to live in a reasonable, law-abiding civilization, but no, these guys got to get high. They got to feed that need, whether it's junk food or heroin, meth, fentanyl, whatever it is. Their needs for that instant pleasure come first. That's gluttony, isn't it? Isn't that gluttony? What is that rooted in? Pride. You think you're that much more important than everybody else? Gluttony feeds off of sloth. Sloth feeds off of gluttony. Greed feeds off of wrath and envy. That envy and that greed generates the wrath. The envy generates the wrath, which generates the greed, which all feeds off of pride. Are y'all tracking? Look up the 7 deadlies. Lust. Ooh, how about lust? Ooh, there's the hard one. You don't think lust is rooted in pride? You don't think lust feeds off of envy because that guy's got a hotter girlfriend than you do? Or that porn channel is showing you a level of hot that you feel like you ought to have, and your housewife ain't really getting it because you feel like you deserve better because that artificial lie that's been planted in your head by the deceiver, and you don't think that that's rooted in greed, and you don't think that that's rooted in envy, and what are those things rooted in? Pride. Every one of the 7 deadlies feeds off each other and feeds off itself, and they are all rooted in pride. Coptic Christianity and Orthodox Christianity, they go a little more in detail, but it all comes down to the deadlies. The evil thoughts, the origin of the currently recognized 7 deadly sins: gluttony, when they have prostitution, fornication, that's lust, greed. Originally in the Philokalia, Sonny, if you're listening, I know you appreciated me bringing that up. Rendered the Philokalia, sadness, envy. The original root word is for sadness. Sadness at another's good fortune. That's envy. Wrath. Dejection in the Philokalia was one of the 7 deadlies. Boasting. Boasting! We all like to thump our chests, don't we? But at the root of all, pride. Pride. Gluttony, lust, greed, sorrow, despair, despondency, wrath, sloth, vanity. Vanity, vanity, all of which rooted in what? Pride. The minute we give into that, and I got to tell you, since I've been in, and I haven't been back long on this path. Nobody driving a gunshot Subaru has any pride. James, pride is a solid cover for fear. Of course, overcompensating on a spiritual level. I completely agree with you there. Completely agree with you there. When a religion becomes a state, it's bad. When the state becomes religious, it's worse. A choice of evils. Absolutely. Absolutely, brother. I know that everybody here understands. I know that everybody here is tracking. When you pass it along to other people, I want you to be able to present the case to them. I've been back walking in the light of Christ for a very short period of time. Very short period of time. I still stumble a lot. There are still things that I have to work on and focus on working on every single day, without exception. If I catch myself slipping for even a second, should well up on me even when I don't intend it. Something that Sonny brought up to me, and I've already discussed this on the sermon before, so it's not like I'm telling tales out of school here. But when I go to, it wasn't even my intent. When I post from memories to my Facebook page, when I post from memories, be like, what you will see now is a whole lot of I have never wavered, right? That is not rooted in pride. I have never wavered is to say, look, I have been consistent. But Sonny was correct. He called me on something. When I posted from all those memories where I was right about this, ha ha, I told you so, ha ha, I told you so. That wasn't where I was going with it. That wasn't my intent. My intent was to say, look, I've been right about all of these things. So when I'm telling you about what's going on right now, maybe you ought to at least give it a fair listen. That was the intent. But because I let go and I gave in to pride and I didn't specify and it came off wrong, because intent means nothing when the end result and the perception come up the opposite of what you had intended. Does that make sense? You guys tracking? So I have to work with that to get my own pride under control. And you've heard me say it before, the three that I work with, the three that I fight hardest and most often, that I'm most conflicted over, the three where I'm most vulnerable, and the deceiver knows it: lust, pride, wrath. Pride, I can get caught slipping easily. Lust is a bit tougher sell, but it can still squeeze in. Right. Fair enough. But that's why when you see me, the one thing that I always pray for is clarity and discernment. Because the second, and I mean the nanosecond, I get to thinking that I'm above any of these things is the second that I get caught slipping, the second the deceiver makes me his dance partner again. And me and Scratch were close for a long time, baby. We were close dance partners for a long time. I know all the moves and I can fall right back into that footwork any old time. All it takes for me to get caught slipping. I pray that the blood of Christ and the redemption that was bought by his torture and murder on that cross keeps me from that harm. I pray for the divine hand of God to keep me focused, to keep me moving forward, because I don't want to have to depend on protection. I want to be a strong enough vessel that I can carry the fight myself. Not rooted in pride because I'm such a badass, but I want to attain a level where I am walking the path on such a level that my head, my heart, my spine, and my balls are all lined out to go knuckles up. And every time the deceiver and his minions come with their deception, every time the adversary tries to break me down, I am ready to stand. I am ready to stand. I give a nod to the boss. I give a nod to the carpenter kid and just say, all right, y'all keep an eye on this. I'm going in. That's the level where I want to be. I can't say where you want to be, but that's where I'm going. And hopefully anything that I have to offer, through anything that I have to say, the words that emanate from my mouth, hopefully the Spirit will speak through me, touch you, whether it's your heart or your soul, or even just your mind or your balls for that matter, to prompt you to get up to a next level. Yes, sir. That is the understanding that we have, is it not, brother? That is the understanding that we have. So that's it. Know what the fight is going forward. Do not get caught up in the fear and the lies, or even the politics and the religion. Your walk is with Christ. Your walk is with God. Your walk is not with the church. A church can carry the message of God, but God is not the church. Christ is not the church. The church doesn't define God. The church doesn't define Christ. And the church, even if that church happens to be the state, no matter what that religion is, it shouldn't define you. Let the boss and the carpenter work through you. Don't be defined by things of this world. That's what I pray for every one of you guys. I'm going to close with a prayer. Lord God, as always, I ask for clarity and discernment above all other things. The deceiver and the adversary is the father of lies, and it is through lies that he will do his work. It is through lies and fear is a liar. Lord, help me to recognize those fears for the lies that they are. Help me to recognize the minions of the deceiver and the adversary and the lies that they try to sell me to control my behavior, to take my legs out from under me when I'm trying to build a solid rock. When I'm trying to be that solid rock on which you can build your church. When I'm trying to be a more solid vessel for your will and your word. Help me to cast those lies aside and to walk in the light without fear. Lord God, I pray these things. Pray these things for the sake of the grace and forgiveness and redemption. It was bought through this blood of your Son, scourged, tortured, and murdered on that cross to buy redemption for those that are irredeemable. And I hope and I pray and I work to be a better vessel for your will and your word. I ask that you give me discernment, clarity, and guidance to build that strength, to be that vessel. I ask in the name of the risen Christ. Amen. Appreciate you guys being here. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. I love y'all, man. I love y'all. Mean every last bit of that. I love y'all. Appreciate you being here. I'm gonna throw out the plate. You guys already know I'm on all the formats. If you want to chuck me some coin, that's great. If anything that I did for you, like you feel like it should rise to that level, but I also get the fact that a lot of us are up against it right now. A lot of us are up against it. We are living in that Biden economy, and there's not a whole lot can be done about that. I do pray that all y'all find that strength. I do pray that all y'all find that clarity and that guidance. I pray that your walk, whether it's in the light with Christ or whether it's in the world, I pray that your walk will be as unimpeded as possible. I pray that you will find the strength within yourself to build up that strength for the fight that's coming, because we all know that fight's coming. I don't care if you're walking in the world or walking in the faith. I don't care. If you're walking in the light or if you're just crawling your way out of the darkness, I don't care. You know the fight's coming. We all know the fight's coming. There's not one of us out here that is looking around right now at the things that are going on in the world, looking at the changes that are going on, looking at all the prodigal sons, for lack of a better word. Those of you guys that are familiar with the scriptures, all the prodigal sons that are being brought home right now. Who the hell would have seen that coming? Why? Because God's building his army. Why? Because there's truth in the scripture. We don't know when the day is, but we can all feel that fight, can't we? We can all feel that. We can all feel that crackle. We can feel that electricity in the air. Now, Bart, that could be the drugs. Yeah, well, I haven't done hard drugs in a long time, my friend. I haven't even done psychedelics in a while. I have someone close to me. I'm not going to call him out because I'm going to let him make that call. But I have someone very, very close to me who I did not expect would come back to the faith. And he has. And absolutely brings tears to my eyes, man, because I'm seeing the power. I'm seeing the power of it work. We all know that fight's coming. If you're walking in the light, great. If you're crawling your way out of the darkness, great. But build that strength, man. Build that strength. Like we say at the close of every program, live the 3. What is the iron rule? It's about strength. Not just here, but here. Gotta have it, man. Knuckles up, baby. Knuckles up. There's a whole lot of people that work, that are assets for the adversary without even meaning to be. It's not through their actions, through their inaction. It's through their arrogance, through their pride, because they didn't think it could happen to them. And they're walking around crawling with demons and don't even freaking know it, man. One thing I've noticed about my people that are walking in the faith, you can see that demon, can't you? Even a lot of my secular friends, they don't call it, I can see that demon, but they know that vibe. When they walk into a room with somebody and your haunches just go up. There's evil in that. Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. No, you know. When you're in the presence of it, you know it. And it gets bigger and it gets more arrogant every single day. The largest elements of our culture are pushing it. And they're not even being subtle about it anymore. They're literally rubbing it in your face and daring you to do something to do it. And you know what? A lot of people are taking that dare. What are they doing? They're stepping up and breaking skulls? Not yet. They're stepping up and they're coming home. They're coming back to the boss, coming back to the carpenter, coming back to the faith, coming back to the church, coming back to the word, coming back to the spirit. They are looking at what's going on in the world. They are trying to make sense of it. They can't make sense of it. And they are looking, they are reaching, they are desperate. And that guidance and that strength through the Lord, through the Lamb of God, through the light, that guidance and that strength is there. And it'll guide you home if you let it. It's all right, man. It's all right. Look, and I'm not judging you, man. I'm not judging you. We get there when we get there. But I'm going to tell you, like all my Asatru brethren right now, all of my heathen, pagan brethren right now that are looking at it, that the ones that aren't actually serving the left-hand path, the ones that aren't actually walking with the deceiver, the ones who are in it, who are virtuous men who follow other gods. But they are good men and they are righteous men and they have a solid moral compass. We need all hands on deck, baby. We need all hands on deck because they are coming for everything that is right and good. They are coming for love. They are coming for the kids. They are coming for the light. They're coming for it all. And they know they got a very narrow window and we got to be able to stand strong in that gap. We got to be able to stand. We got to be able to stand like Leonidas at Thermopylae, man. We got a narrow avenue for them to get through, and we got to stand like iron in that gap, even though we'd be outnumbered thousands to one. And we're going to take losses, getting back to Thermopylae, right? They lost at Thermopylae. What happened in Plataea? Not very long after that. Still outnumbered, still overwhelmed. We have got to stand with a level of strength so much that it is going to take away the adversary's will to fight, because the ones that are working for the adversary that don't know it, they're not committed. They're not hardcore with it. It's all fun and games for them now, because just like with a lot of Christians, they haven't suffered for their beliefs. I would like to think that a lot of those Christians are going to be stronger. I can't guarantee that. But a lot of Christians have not suffered for their beliefs, so they've never been tested. These people who are just going along with the adversary because it's cool and edgy to put Satan stickers on your car. Somebody hurt you, and that's how you're going to lash out, I'm reading a copy of Anton LaVey. Look how cool and edgy I am. You ain't been tested yet, son. Life ain't stomped your guts out yet to let you know what strength really is. You're going to wallow in that weakness, and the minute somebody kicks you up off of that, you're going to drop that doctrine like a hot rock. I promise you. That was a little bit of a tear, huh? Anyway, thanks for being here, guys. I love y'all, man. I'm gonna go ahead and play the outro music, and we'll get everything started right here. But I do appreciate y'all, man. If you want to throw me something, that's great. That's cool. If you can't, I get that too. Here's what you can do, though, man. Share the program, share the message. If not through me, you don't want to share my sermons, my podcast, at least share the word. At least share your own beliefs from your own root and your own soul. Because we do need all hands on deck right now. Share that. Spread the word. Spread that gospel. All right? And above everything else, here's what you can do, not just for me, but for yourself. Like my bro Mike Stone, he's always saying, live the three, baby, live the three. What does it mean to live the three? 3 prime directives. 1, you got to be that signal in a world full of noise. You got to be that signal that cuts through the noise. Because the signal to noise ratio is all screwed up right now. You have to maintain focus on being the signal that splits through the noise. You got to be the light in a world full of darkness. You got to be the light that breaks through the darkness. They will try to bury you with the darkness, convince you that's all there is the darkness. They will demoralize you. They will dehumanize you. They will emasculate you. You have to be that light to break through the darkness. And above all else, the iron rule, the prime directive, you have got to be that strength in a world full of weakness, because without that, nothing else matters. Without the strength, you can't carry that signal through the noise. Without that strength, you can't carry that light through the darkness. And that strength isn't just here. That strength is here. It's here. It's here. Sometimes even here. You got to find that strength to break through in a world full of weakness. Live the 3, baby. 3 prime directives. And like my man, Jeremy, man, has to say, OGD, baby, only good days. Make everyone good. Make everyone worth it. I love y'all. Appreciate every single one of y'all for being here. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. See you next Sunday, man. Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. God bless. God bless. Stay strong, y'all. Stay strong. Peace.